Yes, thank you. If you start recording, appreciate that. All right, Janice, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome you and call to order the full commission meeting of the Metro Human Relations Commission today, July 6th at 4:13 p.m. And we'll go ahead and get the meeting started. I'd like to confirm quorum, that we do have quorum among the commissioners. Do we have any regrets to express from commissioners not available today, Mel?
I don't believe that I've received actual regrets, though.
Okay.
I do know that Pratik Dash is just running a little behind, so I know, hopefully he will be able to join us soon.
Okay, we'll look forward to Commissioner Dash joining as soon as possible. With that in mind, we'll go ahead and if someone could make a motion that we approve this meeting being conducted by electronic means, we can go.
I'll make that motion. This is Erwin Venick. I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this board. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and any rule that conflicts with Governor's Executive Order 16 permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
Okay, could I get a second on that motion, please?
This is Commissioner Davis. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Do we need to do a roll call for approval, or can we do voice vote?
Given the size of this is Justin Marsh from Metro Department of Law. Given the size of the commission, voice voting is permitted.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Forward.
Chair Rodriguez, if
Yes.
you would allow me to interrupt for just a minute, for a technical matter, Michael, Commissioner Lethea Mann is also on the telephone. It's the 615-838 number. If you could please unmute her as well.
Oh, dope.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chair Rodriguez.
Thank you very much. Okay, welcome, Commissioner Mann. Now we will move forward to the next item on the agenda, which is the review and approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, which were sent to you via email. And if you have any corrections, amendments, or other items regarding the last commission's meeting minutes, please share them with the group. Any? Okay, not hearing any corrections to be made. Can we go ahead and get a motion for approval?
This is Erwin Venick. I'll move to approve.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Venick.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mann. Okay, let's, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the June 1st commission meeting as presented, signify by it with voice vote.
Aye.
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 They can't hear me.
You? Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved as written. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barbara, for good comprehensive minutes. Appreciate those. All right, next item, our old business on the agenda. We have officer election. There's some action required here. I think we were presented a slate of candidates. Mel, do you want to guide this, or should we turn this over to that particular subcommittee?
Well, if Quibi, if you would like to speak on behalf of the nominating committee, or if any other member of the nominating committee would like to talk about your meeting. I'm happy to give the floor to you if you would like me to talk about that. I'm also happy to do it.
Hi, it's Quibi. We met about 2 weeks ago, and because of everybody who participated in sending in their votes ahead of time, it made our job easy, and it was pretty straightforward. And I think you guys will all be happy with the slate that we present today.
And to clarify, the what you all sent in advance for nominations.
Right.
So we really appreciate you all participating in that way. And just for the record, Quibi, if you don't mind, I will go ahead and read the slate that being presented by the nominating committee.
Right, go ahead.
Okay, great. Hold on, give me a second here. So for the chair of the Metro Human Relations Commission, Dr. Marissa Richmond. First vice chair, Commissioner Jeremy Davis. Second vice chair, Commissioner Davy Tucker. Treasurer, Commissioner Erwin Venick. And secretary, Commissioner Miriam Abu Fazli. I did have an opportunity to talk to Metro Legal earlier today, just about the logistics of the vote and how best to proceed. And if I misrepresent what I believe was decided the best path forward, then please, Marsh from legal, who's joined us today, if you and correct any misunderstanding, I'd appreciate it. But I believe that the best way forward is for not necessarily vote on the entire slate, but a separate vote for each position. But we can go ahead and do a voice vote rather than doing the roll call. And if there are any no votes on any one position, then we can do a roll call vote for that position. And if for some reason you feel it appropriate to abstain from a vote on a particular position, that obviously is also available to you.
Mel, this is Justin Marsh from Metro Department of Law. Just for clarification, with the understanding that anyone being voted for the position would be abstaining from that vote.
Yes, thank you very much for that clarification. Yes, so if you are the candidate for that position, the expectation is that you will abstain from that particular vote. Okay, and with that, if there are no other questions about how we're going to proceed, I'm going to go ahead and give the gavel back to our chair, Janice Rodriguez.
Okay, thank you very much. We are just clarifying we are proceeding at this point with the slate and individually with the voting today.
That's right. We're taking each position individually.
Okay. And I'm so sorry. I'm looking through my email attachments for I know you read the slate off, but is there a particular order that we need to start in? We start with the chair. Is that correct?
There is no requirement from which direction.
Okay,
Though I think Erin Pryor has her hand raised for a question.
okay, thank you. Go ahead, Erin. And you're muted, I think.
She's unmuted. Erin, you there?
Yeah, we are not hearing you, unfortunately.
Okay, and while we're on this moment, hold on. Well, if you could promote Pratik Dash from attendee to participant, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. And I did not hear what Commissioner Pryor said at all. I'm not sure if, okay, making sure it was not just my equipment. So sorry. I don't know if there is a way to write your question into the participant dialogue box, Commissioner. Okay.
She can also text me if she needs to. And again, Michael, if you will promote Pratik Dash.
Yes, I'm trying to currently. It's
Okay.
not allowing me to do that, so I'm reaching out to Stephanie Judd, who is kind of in charge of these meetings and such.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. In the meantime, shall we go ahead and proceed, since we do have quorum, we'll go ahead and proceed with the what the nominating committee has presented to us from our nominations. In the position for chair, Dr. Marissa Richmond. All of those in favor? No. How do we do it?
Sorry, this is Justin Marsh from Metro Department of Law. We would need a motion and a second.
Okay, thank you very much.
It need to be a proper motion.
Thank you. Right. Thanks for that clarification. For the position of chair, do I hear a nomination? A motion for, I'm sorry.
Offer a motion, but this is David Tucker. I offer a motion for Dr. Richmond, big chair.
Hey, do we hear a second on that?
This is Erwin Venick. I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? With aye.
Well, if there's any conversation,
Aye.
Janice, it always give people the opportunity to have any, any discussion if necessary.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay. I'm hearing none. Okay. So at this point, we're hearing no discussion. Go ahead and signify with those in favor. Signify with aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Okay, very good. Thank you. Congratulations.
And Janice, remember to ask for abstentions as well, but congratulations.
Any abstentions? Yes. Okay. All right. Do I turn it over to her now?
Not yet. Sorry.
Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. I'm still here with you guys. I'm hanging in. All right. So the next position is the first vice chair. And we have on our slate Jeremy Davis. May I hear a motion?
I'll move that Jeremy Davis be first vice chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Bennett.
Second, this is David Tucker.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. First, second. Is there any discussion?
That is.
No. All right, hearing no discussion, we'll go to a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Other than Commissioner Davis? All right, hearing none. Welcome, first Vice Chair, Commissioner Davis. Yay, thank you. All right, moving on to second Vice Chair. We have presented before us Commissioner Davy Tucker. May I hear a motion?
I'll move that Commissioner Tucker become second vice chair.
Commissioner Venick,
Second.
I'll second.
I'll second that motion.
all right. Got several seconds. Thank you. Commissioner Miller, I heard, and others. All right. Is there any discussion on this nomination? All right. Hearing no discussion, we'll move to a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Right. Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, the motion carries. Congratulations, second Vice Chair Tucker.
Melody, I have
I'm sorry.
Can everybody, if you're not talking, can you mute, please?
Very good.
Thank you.
You'll have to click on your mute button when it comes time for voice vote. All right. The next nomination is for treasurer, and we have Commissioner Venick. May I hear a motion?
This is Marissa. I will make the nomination.
Thank you.
This is Dash, second.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Dash, for a second. All right. Any discussion? All right. Hearing no discussion, we will move to voice vote. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion is carried. Congratulations, Commissioner Venick. Thank you. And finally, we have a secretary. We have Commissioner Abulfazi. Do we have a motion on the nomination?
I'll nominate Commissioner Abulfazi for secretary.
And I will second the nomination.
Thank you, Commissioner Richmond. All right. Any discussion? Commissioner Abulfazi. Hearing no discussion, let's move to a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, congratulations, Commissioner Abulfazli. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our voting. Congratulations to the new slate commissioners. All right. And I guess the turning over the virtual gavel will occur at the next meeting then, Mel? Or okay, making sure. Very good. Okay, on our old business, the next item that we have is the continued discussion of COVID-19 response policies on vulnerable communities in Nashville. I appreciate very much the transcript that was provided in our minutes of of our last discussion and what we're doing going forward here with the COVID-19 policies. We'll turn it over to Mel for an update on these.
Great. Thank you so much, Janice. I do have a couple of updates. First, an update related to Mr. Kirkley, who's the gentleman who had been arrested leaving the shelter at the fairgrounds. Mr. Kirkley is represented by the public defender. He sought to dismiss the charges and made a number of constitutional claims. The General Sessions Court denied the dismissal. He was granted what's called a writ of certiorari from the criminal court, which is basically a special kind of appeal. And a hearing was scheduled for this morning on his cert, and I will update you all when I hear more, particularly if there's a ruling. I want to give a sort of shout out to my colleagues at the Public Defender's Office. I just think that their brief addressing the alleged constitutional violations was very well written. And if you have any particular interest in constitutional law, or in his case in particular, I'll be happy to forward the brief to you. I know I sent it to a couple of folks on the commission. But, let me know if you too are interested in looking at that brief. A second update is I recently served on the working group for the Metro Public Health reviewing the data sharing policy. You'll recall there had been the agreement between Metro Health and the police department to share information related to COVID positive residents, their names and their addresses. The health department voted to end that policy, and in the interim set up a working group to look at the efficacy of the policy, the wisdom of the policy, what sort of boundaries or guardrails might be appropriate for such a policy, and then to look at what kind of technological, or what kind of technology that would Metro need to employ that recommended policy. And so I served as a member of that working group, as did Jill Fitchard, the chair of the Community Oversight Board, and the recommendations that our working group agreed to will be going to the Board of Health for consideration and possible adoption this week. I can tell you that I felt very good about our final recommendation as to the boundaries of the policy. They haven't been adopted yet. So I look forward to seeing what the health department does with our recommendations. Our recommendations do allow for some data sharing with emergency management services, EMTs in particular, right? If a call results in an ambulance coming to transport an individual to a hospital, the working group agreed that that was an appropriate time to share information with those particular first responders. And if there was a custodial arrest and a resident is being taken into M&PD custody, taken to booking, and then possibly to the jail, that is an appropriate time for data sharing. The data sharing would not be in the form of a list. It would be information that's maintained only by the health department, and the technology sought to effectuate the policy would be way in which let's say the EMT can ping the data that's being held by the police or by the health department. So there is not broad scale sharing of the information. It's at these particular moments when these first responders can then ping the system. So that was the recommendation. Like I said, it has not been adopted by the health department. So I look forward to seeing how they handle those recommendations.
And they might be?
I think they meet tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I will check, and certainly, their meetings are public, as are ours.
Mhm.
So if you're interested in listening to their conversation about this, then you could probably join by telephone, and I can look for an agenda and forward that to you tonight.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other discussion on the COVID-19 response? Any from other commissioners?
This is Pratik Dash. I swear, one day I'm going to figure out how WebEx works. I promise it's going to happen. But I just wanted to say, I know I spoke a lot when we had this meeting last month, and I think that I just wanted to say that I really appreciate each of the commissioners who came together, decided to take action, and I know that many of you had strong opinions on this, and I just appreciate us coming together and making a decision and moving it forward. I really believe that our recommendations are really helping make change. And again, like I said before, I'm new kid on the block. I get it, I understand, and you guys have probably been doing this forever. But it was a really powerful moment for me, and I appreciate being here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm glad you're jumping in with both feet. We really do appreciate that.
And let me just say in support to, Pratik, I have no doubt that your commission being invited to the table for that working group, right, and your director being there to represent your positions is obviously a direct result of the advocacy that you did. And so yeah, it did in fact have an impact on the policy going forward. So thank you very much for your service to the city and for trusting me to represent your positions.
I appreciate that. I wasn't just trying to turn this into a love fest. I promise. I love all y'all, but it's good to show appreciation in these crazy 2020 times. So.
Absolutely, and noted very much. Thank you. Okay, just one other note. I mean, I know that there's been continued discussion of the disparities in the COVID-19 outbreaks in the different communities, and there have been additional articles, talking about the Spanish-speaking communities, South Nashville, et cetera. Are we looking into that in any greater detail, Mel, or what's our duty?
So there is actually another issue that, yes, we are continuing to look at those numbers, and we haven't done any extensive literature review or analysis in our office, but I'm going to ask Sarah to work with me looking at that. We also have an intern for the summer who is assisting with updating our Title VI educational material and training material. And I will ask her to join us in sort of doing a review of the demographic information that we have available. But my participation in that working group with for the health department did also lead me to understand another issue that has, I think, possible significant impact in our city's ability to equitably respond to the disease, to the virus, and to provide service to Nashvillians. And I just wanted to raise this issue with you. I'm going to follow up with the health department about this, but in the discussions around, to what extent the data sharing arrangement may discourage residents from getting tested, I thought a data point that might be quite revealing would be the demographics collected at the point of testing, right? So we have the 3 assessment centers and assessment sites for Nashville that people can go voluntarily be tested. And so I asked, well, what kind of analysis has been done on the demographics of those who go to the assessment centers and voluntarily submit and request testing? And the answer was they don't collect demographics at the point of testing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think it's a significant equity issue. In fact, me and my colleagues in the office do considerable training for organizations on, how to embed equity and equity analyses, like in your organization and the way you do things and how you provide services. And one important factor is collecting and analyzing disaggregated data about who you're serving. So I think this is, to me, it's a big deal, right? So we're only collecting demographic data from those who test positive, like at the second point of contact, not at the point where people are voluntarily being tested. So this is something that I'm raising with some folks who serve on the Board of Health, and to try to put it into context, like what the importance for equity analysis is in collecting that data on the front end.
Yes. We'll keep us posted at what you learn.
Well, I'm interested, yeah, and if anybody has commentary or want to add ideas or concerns, I would love to hear from you.
For that.
Well, I just have one clarifying question. So you're saying that currently now that the data is not taken on everybody, just on, okay.
Good, just on the positives. So if you go to an assessment center, one of the 3 assessment centers, and you get tested, at that point, there is no record or demographic information. That only gets collected at the point where your test comes back positive, and then there's a follow-up from the health department on, you know, what you need to do because you've tested positive. At that point, they collect demographic information.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I heard correctly.
And just Sherwin Bennett, just out of curiosity, do you have any understanding of what the rationale is from the health department's perspective?
I don't, quite frankly, I don't. Now I do know that in my conversations with Dr. Caldwell, you know, collecting the demographic information for everybody who is tested in the city is a difficult prospect, right? Because now everybody who's being tested are being tested at the assessment centers that are run by the health department, right? You could be tested at your doctor's, or, right, you know, there's lots of, you know, you go to a clinic, there are other ways in which you can obtain a test. But at least for the assessment centers, we have the ability to collect that information as far as I understand. But I'm going to continue that conversation because, you know, to me, it was really disappointing, you know, in the conversation around whether or not residents are, you know, were discouraged to seek testing voluntarily, right, after having learned of this data sharing arrangement. It would have been interesting to look at the demographics of those who are voluntarily going to the assessment centers. Linda Robinson, I know you have something to say, so please.
That is really confusing to me because right after the last holiday, there was a statement made on one of the mayoral updates that said everybody was encouraged to come forward who had been involved in, you know, marches or any public gatherings. Everyone was being encouraged to come forth and be voluntarily tested. There was a statement made that the Black community was not responding and that the Black community was being encouraged to come out and take advantage of the testing because most of the people that they were seeing coming out was not the Black community. So how would they know that if they were not gathering that data?
So Dr. Caldwell, from my conversation with Dr. Caldwell, I would suggest that that was based on anecdotal evidence reported from the healthcare providers at the assessment center.
That's pretty scary.
Right, and I say that because when, you know, sort of at my surprise that the demographic data wasn't being collected at that point, he did suggest that there was, you know, the possibility of getting some, you know, anecdotal data or anecdotal suggestions from the healthcare providers, but there's no hard data.
If we're going to share information like that, I don't think we need to be depending upon anecdotal information. If they're going to utilize that data in any kind of way, we should have some raw data to work from.
I agree with that 100%.
I will definitely continue this conversation with them. And, you know, I've already had some conversation with one of the members of the Board of Health, somebody who has some expertise in health equity. And so I'm going to continue that conversation. is I certainly believe, and I think that the member of the health board, who has experience in, health equity also agreed that it's not, we're at a real disadvantage to ensure that we're providing services equitably
That's correct.
without having that kind of data.
Okay.
I guess they're visual opinions of who they're testing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Robinson. Any other thoughts on the COVID-19 responses? Thank you, Mel, for going to more detail on that.
Yeah,
Commissioner
Marissa.
Richard?
Yeah, thank you. What about the testing center at Meharry, and of course, I think CVS and Walgreens are now doing drive-through testing as well. How much collection of demographic information do we know is taking place there? How much are they sharing that with Metro Public Health?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm happy to add that to the list of, help us understand, what data is being collected. Because I don't know. I do know, like, one of the assessment centers is at Meharry.
Okay.
But I don't know about the private companies. I don't know. I don't know if there's any obligation to share data that isn't related to positive tests.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mel,
Yes.
while we're talking about the sharing of data related to COVID-19 testing, I find it difficult to understand the mayor's report or whoever are releasing the numbers when they don't report date of test. So it seems like we're getting numbers that come out and it looks like a surge. And then at the same time, they'll say, well, we don't really know when these people were tested. So it's almost like they're waiting, or they could be waiting, and then they get a bunch, and then, okay, it's a surge. Let's keep the lockdown going. And it's just not information that is useful, the way they're reporting. It seems like it's some lack of transparency in the way they're reporting these numbers.
Yeah, I've heard from other constituents concerns about, the way in which Metro is reporting. I will say that, the delay in reporting the positives vary from facility to facility. I just heard today that some residents who had been tested at the stadium center, well over a week ago, still hadn't received results. So there's been some delay recently, but you're absolutely right. The number, my understanding is the number that is released every morning at 9:30 is the number of positives that have been reported to the health department within that 24-hour period since the last report. But it does not, you're right, I do not believe that reflects at all the date on which those individuals had been tested.
So as far as we know, that the health department does not have a requirement that of any particular reporting window from the various labs and or healthcare providers, nothing, there's, that that it's required that they report within 48 hours of a positive test or anything like that?
I can't say that they do or don't. It's outside of my knowledge.
Okay. All right.
I'm happy to look a little bit further into that. But I think, the demographic information, that's a good question to go along with. Are we collecting demographic information beyond the positives?
Okay, thank you.
It also makes sense to me, just from the little bit, I understand. It also hi, this is Miriam. I think the issue from the health department's perspective on a lot of this is just sort of how quickly they can get the things going. So I think with the data, from what I understand, they just provide what they get from the centers. So, and then I don't know if you've had anyone tested, if you've gone tested yourself, but the delays are so varied depending on where you've gotten tested, which I don't understand. So it could be that I went to this center and it took me 4 days, and you went to that one and it took you 2 days. But all that would show up on that Thursday that all that was reported. And so I think that that's basically what you're saying, Mel. And I think that is as effective a system they have right now. My hunch is that it's not some sort of intentional lack of transparency. It's just how the system is working. Like, if you imagine you have a bunch of franchises and some, I don't know, for whatever reason, are on top of their number a little faster than others, you just take what you get that day, essentially.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Miriam. And I think a lot depends on the lab to which they send the test.
Right.
Because it's, there's not just one single lab that are processing every test that comes out of Davidson County.
It also depends on what you're going for. Is if you're not symptomatic and you go, they do the Roto-Rooter where they go all the way deep into your sinuses, that test takes a little bit longer. If you go in and they just do the tip of the nose and the nares before a surgery, or those that comes out in 24 hours. So it depends on if you have symptoms, if you don't have symptoms, or if you're going into Vanderbilt for another procedure.
Yeah, I think my point was not so much that somebody's trying to mislead. My point is that it is misleading, the way they're reporting it. I mean, I don't think somebody's intentionally doing it. Well, I'll take that one back. But the point is, if you don't know that other information, those numbers are kind of meaningless. And since the numbers to provide information to the public, they ought to do that kind of analysis and then give the numbers. The way they're giving them now doesn't help me, at least, know anything about what's going on with COVID.
Well, I think that's a fair criticism, Dr. Miller. I do think, though, that an answer to that may be, that's why looking at a full 14-day period is important, right? So you're not just focused on the change from one day to the next, but you have sort of an average over a 14-day period.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, here's the thing, you guys. We've never done a global pandemic before.
Correct. You are correct.
So, I think that, I definitely want to give a great deal of respect to Metro employees and the health department and everybody who is probably not getting very much sleep at all because they're on the front lines, and our healthcare providers, right? They're all on the front lines on this. And so I want to at least, voice my respect and show some grace, given that we all have never done this before. And, where we see a real hole in the way we're doing things, or if there are recommendations for improving services, particularly to the most vulnerable, I think that's a good use of your time and my time.
Very good. Excellent point. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that, Mel.
Thank you. In the interest of time and moving along with our agenda, we will go to the new business if there are other issues with COVID, please forward them directly to Mel and we'll, address them for sure. The next item on new business, or the first item on new business, is recommendations regarding recruitment and hiring of the new chief of police. And we have, there was in an email sent to us, draft document, about hiring a recruitment roadmap for the chief of police, which I hope you were able to review prior to coming to the meeting. But Mel, I will go ahead and let you take this conversation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I want to say, first of all, thank you, Sarah Imran, our Director of Policy and Research, for working on this initial recommendation. This stems from, I don't know, it was many months ago when we were able to actually be in the same room with each other. There was conversation about, if at some point, Nashville is going to get a new police chief. And, at that point, does this body have recommendations for the mayor's office, and to share with the mayor's office recommendations on community engagement or methods of pursuing the recruitment and hiring of a new chief of police. And given the amount of work that this commission has done over the last 5 years on Title VI issues and criminal justice issues, it seems absolutely appropriate that you all might have some recommendations to make. Sarah, collaborating with Peter Valier, who heads the research team for the Community Oversight Board, they've met and came up with the draft that I sent you. And, for the record, I'm going to go ahead and summarize what this document says. I'll attach the draft minutes of this meeting. But basically, the recommendation is, as a first step, that working together, the Metro Human Relations Commission and the Community Oversight Board, their research staff, do a literature review and study on what other cities have done in ways in which they've engaged constituents in hiring a new police chief. And there's a suggestion to do a constituent survey. That would include independently, right, the police department, right, survey of officers, taking account of current departmental culture, as well as, desired departmental culture. What do officers want in a police chief? And then separately, other departments, right? There are other departments that interface closely with the police department. So a survey designed for those departments to gather information regarding, what their prior experiences have been with the department, with the chief, what can be improved in the future, and then a community at large, gathering information about community members' past experiences with the police department, and what characteristics they're looking for in a police chief, what changes they want the next chief to implement in the department. And then the suggestion is that MHRC and the COB will together design the drafts of those survey instruments, assist with the survey collection, and then doing the data analysis. And then we can present to the mayor's office a comprehensive report based on the literature review and survey. And then we also recommend that those surveys be incorporated into the screening of the candidates for the position, in designing the interview questions, and in making the final decision to ensure that, the vision of that all of these different constituencies have for the position aligns with the vision of our next chief. We also recommend that once interviews begin, that there be some way of doing candidate questions directly in front of constituents, like town hall setting. Not entirely sure how to do that in the COVID world. But if you hearken back to when Dr. Joseph was hired by the school board, I think that there was a lot of positive response from the community on the method by which those interviews were done publicly for, I think it was the last 3 or 4 candidates. So that's the draft that Sarah put together with Peter at the COB. But I would like to open it up to you all for comment and further recommendation, or to say, yeah, that doesn't represent what I would hope for, or, refining.
Right.
I would like the recommendation to reflect, generally speaking, what you all as a commission would want to recommend.
Can I ask a question, Mel? This is Pratik.
Of course.
I just wanted to ask, is there, and I see Sarah on the call too, so if she can answer it better, happy to hear from her. But just wondering if there was any sort of diversity, equity, inclusion aspect to if we can put those sort of questions in the interviews or something, especially around cultural sensitivity, and especially in the times that we're living in today. I think that's one point. The other point that I want to add is just reaffirming the idea of making it a public interview. And I think if there is pushback from whoever's doing the interview or whatever, to kind of say this is a time where transparency is so important for the police department, and it's a great way as a show of faith. I think that in this moment, it's the police department's job to prove their trust to the community and not the other way around. And so this is a great way for them to take that first step. And so I just want to reaffirm that I agree with that. But I'll just wanted to add the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect. I defer to you all on how to work that in, but if it is worked in, that would be awesome.
Pratik, I do have a follow-up question in response to that. So do you mean incorporating a question with regards to diversity and equity in the survey that we give out to our constituents to ask them how they feel about that? Or instead of asking them just an open-ended question about the values that they're looking for in a police chief, just explicitly mention how they think that fits into the vision of a police chief? Is that
or it could even be what would you like to see improved on a diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that way we can help identify the shortcomings of the last chief, or just showing it as this is a way as an improvement point that the community feels like it was let down, and this is a way that we can, they look into it for the next interview. Is kind of my thought process.
Okay, I've made a note of that. Thank you.
Something that comes up for me is you know, I watched the last COB meeting. I'm sorry, I watched the last COB meeting, and they did the 8 can't wait. They talked about the 8 can't wait report on Nashville, and then obviously there are some that are just police abolitionists. And so I guess I wonder, like, how do we incorporate, you know, I don't want to use the word radical, but how do we incorporate the furthest sort of boundaries of what's possible in policing today into this process, so that we aren't limited by, okay, well, we've got to hire this person, and this person's got to abide by, you know, whatever the existing rules and traditions and expectations. I mean, I know the survey is going to hopefully nudge at that, but I also think that some of these ideas are even on the outer bounds of that, even for the community, from what I've understood. And so I would hate to kind of lose that whole conversation because it's not mainstreamed enough, or not, you know, in these three populations that you want to survey. I don't know if that conversation is going to come up and how it should come up.
Yeah.
But just to say, like, if we have an abolitionist movement, or if we have the 8 can't wait, how are those issues reflected in what people want? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I have a couple of thoughts in response to that. So first, I think the budget for the next year has already been decided. And so at least for the next year, we do have to work within the framework of the police budget that's been decided, and the fact that there is going to be a police chief. I absolutely hear what you're saying in terms of, so I guess my follow-up thought is, working within the framework of the budget having been decided, and the fact that there is going to be a police chief, regardless of whatever our personal ideology or views might be regarding the extent to which the police department should exist. Working within that framework, one thing that I had a hard time when I was doing online research regarding what other cities have done is that when I search for things like community-led or community-driven hiring practices for a police chief, I found close to nothing. But when I tweaked that to seeking community input, then I was able to find certain things. And I think that that's such an important distinction. The fact that, like, there's almost no precedent for community-driven or community-led hiring of a police chief. Community input, sure, other cities have done that. So I think what we can do, Miriam, to address your concern is, like, what I was also thinking, having some sort of accountability measures in place. So if we do see community input, how are we then incorporating that? What accountability measures do we have in place to make sure that that input is incorporated into the person that is hired?
Yeah, I almost want to ask the interviewees, what do you think about the abolitionist movement? I just want to know, are they, you know, so that this context of this moment is sort of digested and fully embodied in that person that's taking this responsibility. And beyond the abolitionists, the 8 can't wait is about police departments. It's not about abolition, you know, and it's got like 8 or 10 recommendations. And it would be great to have that in the interview process. Like, what do you think about chokeholds? What do you think about, you know, whatever the, you know, the other ones, announcing when you're going to shoot? What do you think about not shooting at a moving vehicle, you know? And I obviously I'm trying to push the things that are in the interview, but I'm just saying, somehow I would hate for a whole survey to be done and that stuff be left out. And maybe that's what the community wants. But I just wonder if there's an education or a discussion around some of this stuff to bring it to the surface. I don't know.
No, I completely agree. I've been following the 8 can't wait conversation, and I completely agree that should be incorporated into this conversation. I've made note of it. Yes. And I wonder too if potentially the MHRC can be of support to the COB in terms of widening the reach of the conversation. One thing that, as I was working with the COB's research staff while working on this memo, is that we talk about the fact that our departments, even though they're so aligned in terms of our visions, we don't collaborate enough, and we want to change that. So potentially, like, if this is something that the COB is talking about, we can think about ways that the MHRC can further advance.
Do we know who interviews the police chief? Like, could the COB be part of the interview process?
Yeah, so Miriam, this is Mel, and ultimately the police chief works for the mayor. So yeah, I mean, what we're doing here is really talking about, how is that person going to be recruited, vetted, and then the ultimate decision made. So, I don't think that there's any limit on what that recommendation might look like, as long as it doesn't contravene a specific civil service rule.
A question, couple questions. One, that I think that's a hindrance also, that I'd like to know, are there any executive exclusions so that a senior level department head, not just the police chief, but maybe even Metro wide, but especially the police chief, does not have the group of regular protections that regular just line workers within Metro have under civil service. I have heard the mayor say he's protected by civil service. I don't know of any large companies or even a lot of cities. There are some positions that are excluded from that. This is one that the police chief needs to be excluded from. Also, I also think that any type questionnaire toward whatever prospective chief ought to include the disparity numbers and what are some of their thoughts or ideas about how do you continue to provide public safety, but address the disproportionate impact of the way you police based on the current numbers that we have right now. A good case in point that I think maybe there's just a little slide in here. The DA announces last week not going to prosecute half ounce or less on marijuana. Chief Anderson makes a statement, state law is state law. Then when the discussion about the misdemeanor for not wearing a mask, Chief says that they're not going to enforce that. It troubles me that a chief has that much latitude to, when the DA says, I'm not going to prosecute, the chief says, well, we're still going to arrest them. But now people are dying from COVID, and he makes a decision that we're not going to write tickets to people who violate the mask rule. Now, is this what we want from a chief, that they have the ability to apply the law whenever they so choose? Because I mean, I can see clearly, if I put an equity lens up to that situation, it's clear how that thing comes down. The disproportionate impact of blacks through officer discretion in the marijuana, but also anecdotally, what appears to be a maybe white middle class not wearing mask. And the decision by the police chief, I'm not going to give out any tickets. Now, this is what people see. And by the impacted communities, they clearly see this. And I think that this is what starts tensions to start boiling, where just even in a situation like this, does the chief have the discretion to choose how laws will or will not be enforced? So I think maybe Metro needs to get their house in order around setting up a construct for the next chief. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, I mean, honestly, I know it's an appointed position, but again, like I think these are the kinds of questions that the public needs to be asking the candidates, or like whatever. I wonder if we could set up a way where it's sort of like when the final candidates are decided, that there is community input in this way, where they have to answer to public forum or something. I would love to see if there's a way to explore that. I know I'm going into dream world. I get it. But I would like to shoot for the stars and then start compromising down is sort of what my theory is on this. And so I think like it's exactly what, I think we're all kind of in the same boat, that we have a lot of these questions that we feel like may not get asked. And so I think the question is, how do we ask those questions? I want that to be in the recommendation of like, how do we get those questions asked? And again, I defer to MHRC staff to make it happen, but would love to see it happen.
I agree, but I think Commissioner Tucker's point to me sounded somewhat a little different. And I think that point can be made regardless of the selection process for the chief, is what is the city going to hold the chief accountable for, whoever the chief is? And are you going to let the chief make law and decide which laws are enforced? I think that's a different kind of issue that does need to be clarified, and that could be done outside of this selection process.
I appreciate that clarification. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
So are there other like specific recommendations or general consensus around moving forward with a recommendation as sort of laid out in Sarah's memo? That doesn't preclude the commission from pursuing other recommendations or, any other questions. But if there's something that you think needs to sort of come before you make a recommendation related to the recruitment and hiring process, we'll look at that. Or we can, sort of run concurrently. But I will say that given the timing of the chief's retirement, sort of now is the time, if you want to make a recommendation to the mayor's office on recruitment and hiring and the process by which we as a city do that. Now's the time to do it.
Well, this is Erwin Venick. I support the letter. I think some language could be strengthened a little bit, but that's wordsmithing. But getting to the point of what was just being raised, I might suggest that perhaps the commission and the oversight board work together to perhaps hold a town hall at such time to actually solicit from community at large their thoughts about what kinds of questions should be asked of the candidates for police chief, and do that within the next 2 months. I don't want to overstep the bounds and step on the toes of our sister commission.
Love
Yeah.
that idea.
I appreciate that, Erwin. And, I agree with you. I don't want, as a director, I don't want to step on the toes of, my sister director over there at the COB. And so I can definitely commit to you that I, as director, and my staff, in doing community engagement and in sort of leading on research and policy making, we will do that in deep collaboration with them. And, we bring different, some different expertise too. So I think that it's really the possibility of a very fruitful and successful collaboration in this is really high. Like, I think that we will see we'll be able to influence and really engage community if we do this together.
I have a question. So I don't know much about this, but what when you're appointed chief of police by the mayor and whoever, is this for life, or is there term limits, or how does this come up for review? Like, can we put in, like, is there somehow, like, there's a every 10 years or every 20 years we review what's going on and you can be removed, or do you just sit there for the rest of your life until you retire?
You sit there for the rest of your life until you retire. Then you draw about $6,000 a month until you die.
Advise that.
You know, I do think that we would all benefit from a look at what the civil service rules say and how they apply to the chief. You know, I can tell you your executive does not have the protection of the civil service rules. I serve at your pleasure. And, you know, I've had the benefit of an employment contract with you all. But absent that contract, I don't have civil service protection. So this is a good point at which, you know, we can, again, you know, go with the COB and say, hey, can we look at this together and come up with an educational piece for the community on what do the civil service rules really say, and sort of arm the community to be able to discuss this.
Now, that makes me have one last thought, which is if we fail at breaking the power structure on this and everything is like business as usual, which it seems to be a lot these days, what if we ask for evaluation, say? Let's say, like, what if we get to ask to be able to put in indicators of success? Like, has this person decreased killings, police killings by a certain percentage? You know, year 1, year 2, year 3. Because what you guys were just suggesting about how we determine how long they stay, it makes me think about what does it look like a year from now if it's the same thing and we're stuck with this. But if we had asked ahead of time for some sort of evaluative process or influence, that might be a great way to sort of steer it in a direction that we want it to go in if we don't get say in the interview process.
Well, just to that point, the current civil service rules require annual evaluations, and I don't think he's had one in like the last 4 or 5 years, at least.
Yeah, and if we could say what we want to evaluate by, you know, like not by the mayor's evaluation, but by the people's evaluation, like violence, killings, you know, those kinds of things.
Well, and I think that has really great synergy with the metrics that community will bring to the table when we ask, yeah, how do you want a potential chief to be evaluated for hiring? Right? I think that also informs the metrics by which we can, you know, as a community, ask for accountability.
Cool.
I think that's good. Mel, I just forwarded to you the most recent civil service rules as of July 9th, 2019, a PDF that you can share with the rest of the commission, and then who's currently on the Civil Service Commission. And, you know, just for background so that we can look that over as we have time going
I will
forward.
do that.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for your guidance, and I think that Sarah and I will then, working with the COB, perhaps add in some language about, how the community engagement that, we're going to be recommending on this front end is also what should inform accountability going forward. And if there's some wordsmithing, Erwin Venick, that you want to participate in, we'd be happy to have your feedback. But at this point, we're just going to move forward with this. I'll send out a second draft to you, to the commissioners by email. But I hope that we'll be able to share something, a solid, product with the mayor's office within the next couple weeks, if not, a week and a half.
Very good. Thank you. Looking at the time and the items that we have left on our agenda, under new business is community book reading and a process for recommending agenda items, and then we also have the director's report remaining on the agenda. Mel, what would you like to cover or make sure that we get covered here, because we are technically at time, although we may take liberties with a few extra minutes.
So some of this new business stuff, I don't necessarily think that I need significant feedback on. I did just want to say that, I know that a number of commissioners have over the last year, and then certainly with the events and the protests in the last month, have been interest in participating in community book reading. I know that there's a lot of interest in Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist in his book. And so we're just exploring with some partners, some media partners maybe, in the library, on how we can help lead some community book reading and conversation about that book. I've committed in my own office that me and my staff are going to do a shared book reading and incorporate conversation in our staff meeting, for our own staff and personal development. And so I'll keep you up to date. We're just now really exploring what that would look like. And if you are particularly interested in that, I wish you'd send me an email so we can include you in that planning, and how we would lead a community book reading.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Right. The Pratik Dash, I think he might even now have to jump off the call, but he raised an issue, as a new commissioner. I did a orientation for him last week, and he asked the question, well, how do individual commissioners get agenda items like on the agenda, right? Like if you have a particular interest in something that you want to raise with the commission, how can I get that on the agenda? And, since he asked that, I thought it would be important to raise it with everybody in case there are other commissioners that have that same question. Generally speaking, the chair gets to decide what's on the agenda. But given the open meetings law, you have anything that you want to put on the agenda for our meetings, you can email me and I'm happy to take that to the chair. I can't imagine a scenario where the chair would reject a suggestion, but for time constraints. So please feel free to bring recommended agenda items to me and I will take them to the chair.
Okay. Do we need to look at perhaps in a rules committee meeting, future rules committee, adding something within the procedures for commissioners about, just that technicality and how we go about that? Because I don't recall reading anything. I don't know that we have
Yeah,
procedural.
any rules on that? And you're absolutely right. Our rules, we've been at the point where the rules do need to be thoroughly, reviewed and updated. And, every once in a while I work with some enterprising commissioners to get that done. But, there are several issues that recently came up. Obviously one is community engagement. And, if members of the community want to address the commission, we don't have any rules around how that looks, right? Like how many minutes, are there limitations? We don't have any rules around it. So that might be something that a rules committee could look at in addition to how requests for agenda items are handled.
Did you hear that, Commissioner Richmond? Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. And in the director's report, is there anything else, or did you didn't do a written report, budget, or anything?
I will have a written report for you, but I did just want to mention just a couple things. One, Sarah and Barbara have been leading an agency-wide training engagement for the legal aid Middle Tennessee. It's been a really significant effort, both in terms of breadth and logistics. And I just wanted to let you know that those two have been working very hard in the name of the commission, and has significant because legal aid has offices both in and out of Middle Tennessee. I've led several trainings and workshops for, Center for Nonprofit Management and some individual nonprofits. And in fact, given the events of the past month, frankly, have had more requests than we could ever accommodate. Everybody is hungry for training, workshops, and for somebody to come lead conversations about systemic racism and, how to be an anti-racist. And so we're definitely getting more requests than we could honor. Sarah and I have started working with Stand Up Nashville and the Tennessee Fair Housing Council and some other housing advocates to develop some community engagement and education related to housing discrimination. And some policy recommendations having to do with planning, zoning, and government incentives to address systemic housing discrimination. We're really in the early discussion phases on that. So next month, I should be able to give you more information. So we did the 3-part series on affordable and fair housing. The last one was about the history of housing discrimination in Nashville. And so this, I believe, is a next logical step. Yeah.
To go along with that, another organization that I'm associated with, we're preparing, and maybe I'll call you. In fact, I will call you to talk to you about this. We're preparing a request for information from MDHA. They are contracting with other counties for people who qualify for public housing. And they're actually moving people to Gallatin, Clarksville, and other cities where they have contracted public housing. While, when they did the Envision Casey, only 1 in 4 qualified person gets to go back over there. And the impact that it's having on breaking family support systems, if the person retains a job here in the urban core, the added cost, the associated childcare costs, but that they are sending individuals to as far away as Clarksville who qualify for public housing.
I definitely want to talk to you and the folks you're working with more about that.
Definitely. So I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you. Last two things for me. We're partnering with the YWCA to promote their 21-day racial equity and social justice challenge. I'll send materials out to you. We just want to help promote the good work that they're doing over there. And then I did want to mention, probably if you were alive and breathing in this city recently, I'm sure you may have heard about the Islamophobic ad that had run in the Tennessean. And, if any of you signed petitions, thank you very much. And I did want to, and she's not on the call, but I did want to give a special thanks to Commissioner Summer Ali for her op-ed in the Tennessean in response to the running of that ad. And she was named as a commissioner of the Metro Human Relations Commission. So, she was able to use that platform to speak on that ad. And if you haven't read it, I will definitely include it in an email with my director's report.
Okay,
Now,
very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
yes.
I'm sorry. Could I just have two quick questions?
Of course.
First, were there any budget either up or the same?
Oh, for the budget?
Yes.
No, our budget is status quo budget. And as far as I understand, there is not going to be any additional required savings for the next fiscal year. And the hiring freeze has been lifted. So, if and when, and we will eventually have an opening, and, Sarah will be pursuing a PhD, and, in another city. How dare she want to go be with her spouse? But when she leaves, we will be able, hopefully the hiring freeze will still be lifted, so we will be able to fill that position.
Okay, good. Thank you. My other question has to do with the recent Supreme Court ruling related to Title VII and LGBT people. Of course, the council passed the contractor non-discrimination ordinance in 2011. Of course, the state said that local government could not exceed federal or state law. Not. This commission issue a statement reminding the community and especially our that ordinance is still in fact. We repealed it, and that we are now in accordance with federal law, and that we expect to comply with that. Would that be an appropriate statement letter for us to issue?
I would be very happy to look further into that. And I'm going to ask our Metro legal, I did Title VII work for a long time. So I feel fairly comfortable analyzing the ruling. But it's exact, like this sort of intersection of who has to comply with Title VII under the federal law and what the contractor ordinance said with the preemption from the state, that's something I'm going to have to look at before I can answer your question.
Okay. Well, it's
Right.
just that
It's just about, yeah.
state law simply cannot exceed state or federal law.
Okay. No, that's an absolutely fair question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mel, for your brief report here. We look forward to seeing the entire written report. At this moment, we'll give anyone any opportunities for any remaining announcements before we make a motion for adjournment.
This is Justin Marsh from Metro Department of Law. Just quickly, Director Fowler-Green, have you had the opportunity to check which commissioners are on the call, given that we didn't have a roll call vote at the top? So we can record it for the minutes and record the votes.
Yes, I have taken note, as well as Barbara Gunlardi from my office. She's on the call too, and so she takes our minutes. And yes, so she has done the recording.
Thank you. That's it for Metro Legal.
Thanks.
Yes. I'll provide more information later on this announcement, but the organization day job, the Tennessee Language Center, has been fortunate enough to get several grants for COVID-19 outreach into multicultural communities, different language speaking communities. So if you know organizations that have need of translation or interpretation services related to COVID-19, please send them my way, but I'll provide additional information to Mel, and we want to get those funds out. So I'll get the details to you later though. Very good.
Well, thank you all. Congratulations. Oh yeah, sorry, Quibi. I do just want to say, congratulations to everybody newly appointed to the executive board.
Yeah, Mel, I just want to
give a big shout out to Janice for her leadership and thank her for all that she's done for us. And I don't know if this is the right time to do it or not, or if next month Marissa will be driving the truck or not. So, but thank you for everything, Janice.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Just thank you to our outgoing. You've done a wonderful job, and again, thank you for all that you've done for us.
Thank you so much.
I quickly want to give a shout out to Commissioner Yesbach, who, after Commissioner Rodriguez and I visited the homeless shelter last month, he heard the call that they were looking for face masks, and he came up with over 350 face masks that he and his company and friends donated to the homeless shelter. And they're fabulous. They're not throwaway. They're disposable masks. They're real cloth masks, and they're very well made.
Fantastic.
Just trying to go to heaven, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Great to hear it. Good people. Thank you. Let's, if there's a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 No. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure working with you. I look forward to finishing out my term with you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You will.